Welcome back, everybody, for another episode of the Big O Podcast. Today, I am joined by, well, it was supposed to be three gentlemen, but I guess we're going to have to settle for just two today. We're talking to the dads from the Dad Pop Podcast, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun one. There's going to be some dads talking some shit, sharing some stories, getting on each other the way dads normally do when they get together. But without further ado, let me introduce the guys. They'll say a little bit about themselves, and then we're going to just sort of jump right into it. So first off, let me introduce Chaps, the narrator, the real moderator of the Dad Pops podcast. Chaps, how you doing today?
I am good, sir. Thank you for having us on. I look forward to finding out all the dirt that you have on me specifically, because I definitely throw my life to the social media world.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Finding information on you was.
Am I going to be getting divorced on here? Like, what's
No. Quite the contrary. It's probably going to make your marriage a little bit stronger. You know, bring you guys together. That being said, the complete opposite. When I tried to do some research on the next gentleman, H, it was like you were hiding from the government. Like, I don't even know if, like, it's your real name based on the information that I found. Like, there were some dates that sort of lined up on Facebook that just seemed a little out of the ordinary. But the other man joining us tonight is H. H, how you doing today?
I'm doing so good, Julian. Good to be with you. And yeah, I am part of the Illuminati. So the fact that you can't find anything on me is by design, mon frere.
Now, the one thing that I will say that I did notice is that H is a big fan of shorts. No matter the weather, he is a shorts guy. So
sure.
That very much like me. You know, I'm starting to work from home as of, next week for the next month. It's going to be all like sort of business up top, and I'm probably rocking flip-flops. I may not even put pants on, to be very honest.
You got to, man. Like, when you're doing these Zoom calls, that we've been doing them for since March or something like that. Like, I've been, quite honestly, up here, I don't wear suits to work or anything, but I look good up here. And then after that, flip-flops, not even pants are optional most of the time.
Well, for the sake of this podcast, I hope everyone's wearing pants, because otherwise it's going to get a little bit interesting. But I want to get into sort of just before we get into the introduction of what the Dad Pop podcast is all about. I just want to talk about sort of the climate that we're sort of experiencing right now. Obviously, we just came off the cusp of, the longest, or one of the longest from memory, elections in the United States that we've just currently seen. And, Joe Biden, president-elect, 46th president of the United States, third time he's, tried to run and finally gets through. Has this been an election that you guys have paid attention to the most? Obviously, you guys are on the West Coast. You guys are right on the border there of Seattle, being your closest sort of U.S. neighbor. Has this been the election we paid attention to the most because of the ramifications that have taken place over the previous 4 years with Donald Trump sort of running amok of the U.S. nation?
So the first thing, I'm going to just answer this here really quick. The first thing I'll say is, yes, it's the most that I've probably ever paid attention to election, but I pay attention to almost all elections, including BC, Canada. It doesn't really matter. I pay attention to them all. But I will say this. For my specific what I work, Joe Biden is not going to be good for what I do. But that doesn't matter to me. It doesn't. Because you had a dictator, you had a racist, you had a terrible, terrible person as the president of the United States. It doesn't. Eventually, you have to put your heart ahead of your wallet, and you have to own up and get. I call him Hitler because I think that's what he's the closest thing to. He's terrible. He's absolutely terrible. He's a terrible person, and I got emotional. I was telling the guys last night when Donald Trump came out there 2 days ago and said that speech, I legit got emotional. I was like, how can people believe this? How can people talk and support this lizard? Like
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when you look at like the numbers when it came to like the popular vote, there was still a large number, a record number of people who voted in this election to begin with. And he received a record number of votes, even for a losing president. And that really just shows you how divided this nation is and continues to be. And it sort of bodes for some scary times over, in January when he finally gets like sworn in and takes the oath. The first 6 months are going to be just interesting because there is such a divide. H, what are your thoughts? Like, what have you sort of seen throughout, I guess, the campaigning, through the election, the results, and what we're going to experience next?
So something you wouldn't have known about me by looking at Facebook is that when I went to school, I actually minored in political science. And while I
Oh, there
was,
we go.
yeah, so I was actually in school taking my degree when it was Obama and Romney. And the school that I go to, the school that I went to for university was quite left leaning, and they painted Mitt Romney as though he was the worst thing to ever happen to potentially happen to the United States. This was a venture
Wow.
capitalist that they coined a vulture capitalist. That he was a constitutionalist. He would set women's rights back 150 years. He would set rights back for immigrants back and for people of color. And to look at that now and actually hold Mitt Romney up as an example on the right to say this is someone who has ideas that are congruent with equality and with fairness is now quite stunning. So what I see is a massive win for the people in terms of fairness and equality in the states, but also a massive loss in terms of the fact that 70 million people, and all fairness to them, they're doing what they think is best for their family. These are
For
not,
sure.
they might have ideas that are different from mine, opinions that are different, and sometimes maybe even, on the cusp of being racist or bigotry. But at the end of the day, they still have a voice, they still have a vote. So to know that 74 million people are in support of fairness and equality and racial justice and LGBTQ rights is fantastic. But on the other side, to know that there's 70 million people out there that feel differently and are set in their mindset to the point where they are saying this election is probably fraud. There was probably millions of votes that just fell out of the sky, didn't happen. That really scares me because these people have been, I'm using the word brainwash a little bit. You basically
Right.
can tell them whatever you want to, and they buy it, and they're passionate about it, and they bring that passion into the streets. So what I'll say to end it is 6 years ago, maybe even a little bit more, people who had opinions, that were bigoted or off color, they usually kept those in their own homes. And that's not necessarily a good thing, but it's a better thing than having the confidence to go out into your grocery stores and out into public and say those things, because in your mind, you still probably felt, hey, these are not acceptable things to say. And I might be on the outskirts. That was all normalized over the last 4 years. And it's going to be sad to see, in my opinion, moving forward, that you're going to have these far right leaning people call people out in public spaces, and you're going to see it on social media and things like that. And I worry for that country and the spillover it's going to have into us moving forward.
I mean, what you said was so right. The president was this representation that because he was so outspoken and didn't care with what he said, it meant that the people of the nation who felt very similar were having the same power to just be able to go out and say whatever they wanted. Very much so, like that election that took place between him and Hillary, it was a very closeted sort of vote. I am almost certain when people ask, where are you going to vote or who are you going to vote for? It was like, oh yeah, I'll probably vote for Hillary, knowing in their mind that they're just too ashamed to say that I'm going to vote for Trump. And then the next 4 years happen. And everyone in the United States and across the world are probably thinking in their mind, man, there is no way that there's a chance that they vote this guy back in. And then come election night, we're starting to see numbers come in. And I don't know if you guys follow Jamel Hill on Twitter, but one of my favorite people to follow on Twitter from back in her ESPN days. She's fantastic. And she comes out and just blatantly says, like, if Trump wins, it's on white people. And it's true because, all of these things that sort of happen and out in the open, whether it's this craziness that he's spewing out there, or we have the horrific things that are happening and sort of the social injustice, to then still say this guy might still be the right president to represent us on a global scale was just mind-boggling to me. I'm a dual citizen. I voted. There was no way that I wasn't going to use that vote to try to not create change, right? Like the nation that the U.S. has turned into over the last 4 years is not one that I am proud to say that I am a part of or from, for that matter, but I'm hoping that some good can come out over the next 4 years and try to right the ship. So it's interesting. Now, we obviously got a little serious into a topic to begin with. For anyone who's listening, it's all downhill from here because where we're about to start off and now go into, it's going to be way more of a relaxed vibe. And that sort of takes us into the first thing. And so what I want to know is, for anyone who hasn't listened to the Dad Pops podcast, this is a similar topic that you guys would probably cover between friends in a very similar way that you guys sort of spoke to. But what can people expect when they're listening to the Dad Pops podcast?
So when this was all kind of like conceptualized, if we go back even a couple years, I've always wanted to do a podcast. Like it was kind of, I just really feel like I'm a good speaker. I have these opinions that can be, that I can articulate very well and people can take both sides with. And I was always trying to figure out that idea for how to get my voice out there and learn how to do a podcast properly. So I think it was a couple months ago, I went to H's house and we were sitting there literally drinking beer on his deck. And we were talking about politics, I think, and just stocks and stuff like that. And I was like, this is fucking it. This is the podcast. This is what I want to do. And then we approached a couple different people. Sorry, Snaps. That's the truth. We approached a couple different people first.
Breaking news. Here we go.
And then we actually, H and I just recorded like 2 episodes or 1 episode by ourselves. Right. And that's how we got the theme for it. Just we want people to feel like they're sitting around the campfire, they're sitting in the bar, they're sitting at a restaurant, and they're just bullshitting with their buddies, and we're just talking. It can literally go from Jamel Hill, who I disagree with a little bit of your stuff on, but Jamel Hill to Bomani Jones to Rex Ryan, or it doesn't really matter, to Shaquille O'Neal. We can talk about whatever, whenever, and we want people to feel like they're in the room with us.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. We were sitting at my house, my backyard, and what we normally do, where this is what the podcast is where we cycle through topics and we'll riff on a topic for 15 or 20 minutes, and then one of us will look at the other and kind of be like, okay, we're done. Either we're agreeing on it, so it's like we don't even talk about this anymore, or it's going to a place, or maybe it's like we'll just agree. We now say we just agree to disagree, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
As long as they agree to disagree, because here's what I think's all changed if I tie it back to politics. It can't be agree to disagree, in my opinion, if one person's opinion on something isolates people or isolates a group, or it's like a terrible opinion. I think we need to call that out. Right. And we've done that on our podcast where we said, look, you can't just shut people down. You can't just cancel people. We had a good debate on this.
Yeah, I told you to fuck off.
But there are certain cases where if your opinion is so far out there, or it does isolate people or marginalize them, that's an opinion that shouldn't necessarily be accepted. But there's a fine line between that. And what gets blurred sometimes is that people try and cancel opinions, which are acceptable. They just might not be your own. So finding that is tough. The other thing I'll say about podcasts is it's also about, dads sharing just brutal honesty and radical candor about what it's like to be a dad and navigate the world. Sometimes you put off an appearance that you have everything under control and everything's just going smooth. And that's part of being that male figure. But there is a dad behind the scenes in all of us where life's a little chaotic and not everything's peaches and rainbows and Friday nights, right? So yeah, that's what we're trying to capture for our audience.
Now listen, it's been a lot of fun. I obviously, the first time I sort of came across the podcast was I think you guys took out like a sponsored ad on Instagram just to get like the word out there, which I absolutely loved because I was interested in it. I was like, what is this? And then I listened to it and I was like, closed my eyes, I had the headphones going on. I think I was either laying in bed or driving to work. And I'm like, man, this is the kind of conversations that I would have with, friends, fellow dads. And it's very honest. You can tell that the chemistry is there from the very beginning. Obviously, now I have some questions about how Snap sort of fits into all of this and the audition process. But I mean, you guys hit it on the head. Like what you guys were trying to accomplish with what you guys are telling me right now is exactly how the podcast sort of comes off. Calling each other out, terrible opinions, like all of H's bets, just terrible.
So bad.
He's a Cowboys fan, so good luck with that. He doesn't even know what quarterback is starting for him this week.
Danucci. Oh no, it's not Danucci.
No, it's not.
The other guy.
Exactly. They have 2 other guys that they're going to flip a coin, and one of them is going to play. And so, like that's the kind of thing that you can go back and forth and do like this, fantasy sports or betting or stocks or whatever it is, politics, and just have that good conversation back and forth. And no one leaves feeling dirty or upset or anything like that we're always able to call some bullshit out when it happens, but then be able to have a beer or smile, then move on to another topic knowing that we're feeling great. But I do want to go back now, Chaps, to what you said. And you're obviously in a podcast, you're trying to find the right feel for everybody. Obviously you and H sort of kick it off. You guys are great. And you're like, okay, let's add in another person.
Yeah.
What was it about Snaps, other than his potential COVID right now, that sort of led him to the top of the pile to say, okay, let this guy be the 3-headed monster that we want to take forward for this podcast?
So H and I were having a conversation, and I'm gonna give this other person a code name because I don't think his name would like to be mentioned. But my buddy 7-6 was the guy that we had actually targeted, and we actually offered him to come on. We legit said, hey, we want you to be a part of this because we all like kind of lived together. H, 7-6, and myself all lived together. So that was the guy we offered, but because of his work, he couldn't do it. He didn't want to take that chance and risk his career essentially by joining us. And then H was like, I got my boy Snaps here that I grew up with, that he's quieter than 7-6, but he thinks more, and like I think he'd be good. So we recorded I think 2 episodes with Snaps. And the first one I was a little skeptical, I'm not going to lie, because I have other podcasts, and I have like an internet TV show too that I do for work for certain stuff.
Nice.
And so I kind of know what it's supposed to sound like and how the chemistry is supposed to be. And I just think he was a little nervous the first time, but since then, man, like he picks his spots so well, and he knows when to say stuff. And he knows, he's had his first controversial statement about Justin Turner. He finally said something controversial, but he's kind of the guy that you need, that calming guy, and that guy that keeps us all together. The phone calls I get from people after we release an episode are man, you and H are just like nuts, but Snaps just calms you guys down, and he comes in and out, and he's the guy that kind of holds us together.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just going to say, so Snaps and I grew up together. We've known each other since we were 5 years old. And the funny thing was, at one point in the spring, we had sat down on the couch at his place watching Netflix and having a BS. And we got into a good argument after a few beers. And I'm like, man, we should do like a podcast. But it was a joke. And the only person I'd ever really talked seriously about doing one with was Chaps. So it wasn't like Snaps came out of nowhere. But we were trying to figure out how we would incorporate another person. Either they had to be a dad or they had to be a single guy. And 7-6 happened to be like the token single guy.
The Van Wilder of the group.
Oh, no, he is Van Wilder, man.
Totally. Yeah, you actually nailed it.
Nailed it, yeah.
That's a nickname we used to have for him. But he's a great guy, 7-6. But anyways, Snaps actually ended up telling me, hey, we're actually like pregnant. And that's not a reason why we brought him on. But I was like, that's another feather in the cap for what's going to make this good. And Snaps is totally coming into his own. He is that calming influence on the pod, that middle ground that, H, you're not quite right. And, Chaps, you're not quite right. I don't know who's right, but definitely neither of you. Let's bring it back to reality. Oh, that's who he is. And I think as episodes go on, you're going to see more of that personality shine for him too.
Yeah, no, I think he's like the second moderator from the presidential debates. Had like a much like stronger hold on as things are going on and being able to sort of chime in. And I just remember my first interaction with him when I scared the shit out of him, saying that I knew what kind of car his wife drove, because he mentioned it on the pod previous. And again, I'm paying attention and I'm listening. And then, obviously he got a little freaked out, but he's got the great fun personality of, like you said, like a soon to be dad. And so like for us, we all have kids, we all have, more than one kid. And for him to sort of, to be able to live vicariously through him going through the first experience, it's so much fun, right? Because it's like, it's a blank slate. He has no idea what is coming down his way. And he's worried about one kid. He's worried about not getting 14 hours of sleep. And we're worried about, just trying to make sure that we can get the right sheet on our beds. Because I know Chap sort of has some challenges with that sometimes, trying to get a twin sheet fitted onto his king size bed. Now, I know he likes to do the laundry. And, even sometimes, I'm a laundry guy too. When we talk about roles in our in our houses, I am the bedtime guy. And that means, bedtime or nap time or wake up in the middle of the night. Like it's dad who's in charge of that. Mom needs her sleep. Mom doesn't get her sleep. The whole house and the whole world is in big trouble. So dad sacrifices for that. So, sometimes we can be a little sleep deprived. But I don't know if I've ever tried to fit one of my daughter's sheets onto my master bed, especially when it's not even the same color. And then when I do laundry, I'm not hanging up bathing suit bottoms on soap dispensers. I at least try to put them on a rack or like a hanger. And so I want to talk a little bit about that and get into, you guys are pretty progressive dads. You guys aren't your typical, traditional, dad has this role, mom has this role. You guys sort of do it all. And I want to know, what is the main reason that you guys have taken on such strong leadership roles as dads? What has been either your inspiration or your motivation to do so? Let's start with Chaps.
So I know my dad's not going to listen to this, so I can say this. My dad is a great man, and he honestly is a big inspiration to me. In saying that, growing up, my dad was never home. He worked out of town. He owned a business, so he was always gone. So my mom, there's 6 of us in my family.
Jeez.
So I think I'm kid number 4 or something like that. And so my mom did everything. She cooked, she cleaned, she made our beds, did our laundry, and we all took it for granted. Like, there's no doubt, right? Like, you do take that sort of stuff for granted. And when I look back on when I first got married, I just said, I don't want to be like that. I want to be more involved. I want to change diapers. I want to get to know my kids, and I want to have those memories of those memories for myself of my kids when they're super young. Getting up, smearing shit on my hands by accident, whatever it is. I want those memories. I hold them dear to my heart, and I don't think my dad he had to sacrifice all that to make sure that we were going to be successful in life. And I do think that's something he regrets a little bit. Right. But so that's kind of my motivation for it, is I want to be like my dad, but I also don't want to be anything like my dad, because I want to see a lot more.
Right.
Yeah. So the interesting thing here is Chaps and I have a similar, although very different, a kind of similar upbringing. So both families self-employed. My dad was self-employed grocery store owner, and my mom worked alongside. And although my dad didn't work out of town, he might as well have, because most mornings I didn't see him when I woke up, and maybe I saw him walking through the door when he went to bed. Right. And there's some different things, like I won't get into it, but I have some beefs, I guess I'd say, with my dad in terms of the way I think our family household was run. It was very centered around our business. Right. But as a result of that, that sacrifice leads to a lot of benefit. So although I look at it from my own perspective and say, I wish I would have had more times throwing the ball in the backyard, or I wish you would have had more heart-to-hearts and sit-downs and get to know each other. I know that there was, that was a price we paid because of the situation we're in terms of our business and wanting to be successful. And there was other great positives that came of that. But part of the way that I am as a dad is I look at some of the things in my childhood and I said, what things did I miss out or feel like I missed out on, or I would want better if I was, me again at 5 years old, and I look at my son or my daughter. And I said, I think the best service you could do to your kids is to try and fill in those gaps. And there'll be other things I miss that I don't do quite so well, or my kids look back on and say, do better. And that's great. They're going to pull that forward to the next generation. But for me, the big things are, I want to be on the ice with my son and my daughter playing hockey. I want to read bedtime stories and do homework. I check in with them every so often. How's things going? I have conversations with them that, man, I didn't have with my parents until I was probably 15 or 16, and just say, yeah. I'll say to my son, how's life? What a weird question to ask a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, but he answers it now. Because at first he's like, well, what does that mean, Dad? And I explained to him, I said, well, here's what I mean about your life. How's your friends going? What's some things that aren't going so good at school? In this pandemic thing, is there things that worry you? Do you have any kids in your class you get sick, or, stories that you've heard? So that's a big thing. Now, I will say there are some times where I fail miserably. There are times where I look at my wife and I say, geez, I wish I could do better in, ABC category. And I admit those faults, and those are things I need to get better at. So although sometimes it may look like, you're cruising through life and you're killing it, there's still things that, and I won't speak for Chaps because the guy's almost 100% perfect across the board. He's like basically the male version of Mary Poppins in his household. But, I'm being humble here and saying, there's always and some humility to it, and that there are things that when I go to bed at night, I think, geez, I wish I could do this a little better. I wish I could do that better. I think that's going to make us better dads because we think that way. And maybe our previous generation didn't always think that way.
I also think a lot of things are based on the times too, right? Like, even though the time period between us being dads and our fathers being dads isn't really that long. It's almost as if there's been 2 generations of change between that, right? And so I don't have a dad who's self-employed. Obviously you guys do. So it's a little bit different. And you're also at the age now and stage where you can understand and appreciate the sacrifices that had to be made for someone who is self-employed. It'd be a little bit different if you worked for someone or part of a company or conglomerate. I work for my municipality. So for me, it's a little bit different. I have more of a 9-to-5 job, but I have a job that I was able to sort of pick that allows me to do the things like get them up for breakfast, be able to be there for bedtime, be able to put them to sleep and sort of have a flexible schedule. And that's the job I picked. And so it's interesting because like I also grew up as like a single kid. Like my mom split when I was young. He lives in the States, which is where I was born. I moved here to Canada with my mom, which is where she basically like grew up. So I didn't really have the dad figure in my life. So the first time I'm just like, shit, we're gonna learn. We're just gonna learn by doing. And my wife is going to trust in me that I'm going to make good decisions, and I'm going to make mistakes because everybody does. Whether you have 10 years of experience or 1 year of experience, you're going to learn. That's just the way that it's going to be. And so I actually end up learning way more from coaches in sports growing up as my father figure, right? Like because that's basically your dad when you're not at home and you're playing sports and you're learning and you're trying to learn to be better and they're trying to teach you life lessons. They fill that void, whether it's a teacher at school or, a recreational or, a rep program. So I want to ask you guys, outside of your dads and the lessons that you've learned, can you point to one coach that you have had in your time of playing sports or a teacher in school that you said has probably had the most impact on the man that you are today?
You go first, H.
Sure. Yeah, I can. I had a few, and I won't name them, but I had a few good coaches. I played, I never went to like any sort of Div 1 school or anything like that for hockey, but I did play competitive hockey, and I spent, good 18 years of my life playing it. And what I got from 2 specific coaches was discipline, commitment to your friends and to your teammates, and respect for yourself and your body. So of course, treating yourself right, getting your sleep. The town that I grew up in, drugs weren't like, I grew up in Nelson, BC. So we get the bad reputation for weed and things like that there, although there shouldn't be a bad reputation.
Oh, come on. I can't let you keep going. That is like the weed capital of BC. You drive in there, there's a big smoke cloud. Like, come on, H.
So we have that reputation, but what I'm getting at is that there's sometimes this, stereotype around that everyone there just must be huge stoners and that's the way of life. Not that there's anything wrong with that. For some people, that's their culture, that's what they want. But anyways, I digress a little bit. But we learned through organized sports that there's a time for that sort of stuff. But for the main part, you need to be focused and centered. And I just stuck with that. That really stuck with me through like university days, where I could really draw the line between excess partying or excess indulgence and recentering myself. And I wasn't always perfect. I fell off, I had the Wednesday night where I was out having a bender and had to be up at 8:30. But in the back of my mind, and I still get it when I have a few too many dad pops, there's a few voices back there saying, are you doing the right things? Are you are you living your life above the line that you set for yourself? And it always keeps you coming back. I did have a few teachers as well that really motivated me. They saw some things in me in terms of public speaking, in terms of some of my opinions. I've always been very opinionated, and they helped guide me towards not being arrogant or being dismissive of other people, which I still can be. It's still one of those things where I have to hop on back. Chaps and I'll get in these debates all the time where I start dismissing him, he starts dismissing me. But again, that humility and being humble, where that voice in the back of your head says, hey, get back on track here, be the inclusive person, be that person who listens to other opinions, don't just talk like I always do on my podcast, talk too much and drone on.
For anyone who got to witness that Chaps outburst, who's not watching and just listening, he's on like glass of wine number 3. And so I'm actually surprised it didn't happen earlier. Depending on how many more times it happens, we may have to put like a counter up on the screen here and just sort of keep track of the amount of times Chaps has an outburst. That being said, Chaps, let's talk about some of the the father figures that you've had growing up so far?
So that's actually bottle number 2, not glass number 3. And for me, I'm a little different in that way. I have 3 sisters who are all incredible women, and I really looked up to my older sister. My older sister, the one ahead of me. I got 2 older sisters, but the one just ahead of me, I really, really looked up to her. And I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, but that was one of the people that really kept me on track. And I think I have a basketball coach too that I really looked up to, but the basketball coach at the same time, he wasn't exactly the best guy overall to be a father figure. So I don't really have that guy. I mean, there's some legit coaches, like watching like Alan Vigneault and Mark Crawford, guys like that were the guys that I kind of looked up to. But my dad was still the guy in my life that I really that really was the guy that guided me. My grandpa, actually, that's probably the best person. But when my dad was out of town all the time, my grandpa used to call me Tiger. And actually, when he got dementia, he was just about to pass away. He said something about like say Tiger, or say bye, or something like that. It's completely random. But no, he was kind of the guy that guided me through, which wasn't a good example because he had his issues as well. But that'd be the guy I'd say my grandpa, but he's not. I didn't really have to have those guys I looked up to too much. I was very lucky that way.
And I mean, that's also important too. Sometimes they do get it right. More often than not, like it's hard. They do say that it takes a village in order to raise someone, and I think it does, right? Whether it's a teacher or a coach or it doesn't even have to be a dad. It could just be a friend. But we take all of those experiences and we try to then do it better when we become dads. And I mean, I think H, I think your kids are a little bit older than mine. I have almost 4-year-old in May and a 2-year-old in March. So my kids are sort of on like a little bit of like the younger spectrum, and we haven't hit school yet. We're not hitting school until like next September. By then we'll have a 3rd baby at home. And so it's going to be fun. But one of the things when it comes to, being a progressive dad, that I at least get a little bit of shit on from, some of the older people that I work with is I've been able to split time on the parental leave with my wife. And so we get 18 months off with our work. And we've actually, the first time we had 12 months, we split it 8 and 4. I got the last 4 months. This past time we split it 9 and 9. And the idea for baby number 3 is the potential for me to actually take a full year and my wife go off for 6 months. And people give me crap all the time. Why would you do that? Why would you send your wife back to work? Why don't you just go back to work? But like you guys have talked about, like the memories you'll never get an opportunity to get back, right? Once they go to school, your time with them is already going to be so limited because they're in school for like 8 hours a day. You're only going to get to see them maybe before, or maybe a little bit after. Then they have homework. Then they go to bed. If they have sports, you're going to catch them for such small periods of time. But for right now, not to brag or anything, but my girls look up to me like I'm their hero, right? They know they need something. They need to go to bed. They need something. They're going to come to me. And that's not something that I would probably be able to instill in them if I'm not spending a majority of the time doing those things with them. And I have no regrets. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. I think my boss might be a little bit of annoyed with it. I just broke the news to her that we're expecting another one, and the first reaction was, well, how long are you going to be off this time? So she sort of like learned to expect in a nice way. Like she wasn't bad about it, but it's just that kind of thing. It's that older mentality of like, oh, I would never give my husband time off. Sure, we can't carry the baby, but it doesn't mean we don't do some of the work that would allow us to be able to, fit that time in with the kids, because the Canadian government themselves right now is rewarding parents who split parental leave by giving them additional time. And that is to encourage both sets of parents to be able to spend time with their kids. Now, with all of that being said, I feel like we started off very serious, and I keep trying to get back to the jokes and the shitty laundry folding and trying to fit sheets on. Now, Robbie, I don't know much about what it was like when you got married. I would love for you to indulge us with what was your wedding song when you got married back in 2012?
Oh my God. So yeah, you didn't find much dirt on me, but just asking these general questions. So I have a great memory for a lot of things, but I have like literally the worst memory for some things. So
Oh
for
boy.
example, I will often forget. Did I forget my wedding date? No, I think yeah. So I'll forget like my wedding date. I'll forget how many years. One time I said, they were like, "How long you guys been married?" I was like, 6 years. My wife looks at me. She's like, "It's been 8." So like I lose time. I lose pieces of time. So in terms of our like actual song that we dance to, I have no idea. But let me
Oh
paint a
boy.
picture. Let me paint a picture for you. I got married at 21.
Okay.
Now, I wasn't your typical 21-year-old, but I also wasn't a 21-year-old who was a 40-year-old. Like, I
Right.
wouldn't say I was the most mature person, but I had some things together and I had some good core values to me that, I knew what I was undertaking and the gravity of getting married young and starting a family and whatnot. But most of my friends at this time are absolute degenerates and
Fuck you. No. Come on.
and Chaps being one of them at the time, and that's fine. Like I don't. One of my things I don't judge. But we had we had 2 tables that were separated for friends because here's the rule. Like I'm Italian, right? After 8:30 at an Italian wedding, when all the meals are done and the nice speeches are done, chaos is allowed to ensue. Okay, it's like
Right.
after dark where the vampire teeth come out. So everyone who are my friends at my wedding have been crushing wine on the
Right.
table, and we had an open bar. They are absolutely piled. They are nuclear at this point. So as soon as that dance floor opens up at 8:30, half of them are hitting the floor and they're ready to go. They're in the right spot. The other half are 10 minutes away from peeing their pants at their table because they're ready to go to sleep. So I don't know if this is where you wanted this to go, but the moral of the story is I had 3 friends that had to basically be shuttled off to their rooms before they created a huge
This is a
scene.
complete sidestep of the question. He asked you what your fucking wedding song is.
I know.
Are you gonna answer it or not?
Because the answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
Or I just don't know. I remember at one point having no shirt on at my wedding and
Oh
doing
my
push-ups
god.
on the dance floor, but I do not for the life of me remember what our wedding song was. It's not because I don't care. It's not because it's not important. It is. It's just one of those things where I can remember what I said in my speech, how my wife looked, all that stuff. But there's certain things that I just will not remember.
Now it's interesting because when I thought of this question, I obviously thought I was going to hold you a little bit more accountable because, like you, I had one song. I'll remember that song because I was the one who picked it. Because again, it was one of those things that I cared about more. And while you can laugh, and I suggest that Chaps laughs now and not later because it's going to come around, we picked "Amazed" by Lone Star. And
Oh, good song.
Right. I picked it because of the lyrics, right? But it came down to like 3 or 4 songs. But traditionally, you got to have one song, unless you're going to be like really progressive and decide that you're going to combine 3 songs from 3 genres
Crazy. Who would do that?
and then have a choreographed dance to it.
Psycho.
I mean, I right now have put in a request for records to see if there's a video that exists.
Oh, there's
If
videos.
if it does, I'm hoping to send it my way because this is going to accompany the video clip for this one. Now, Chaps, tell us about how you decide to mix the Fray with Eazy-E and then finish it off with a little AC/DC.
So, first of all, Robbie didn't even invite me to his wedding, so I can't even help him out with the,
There we go.
the wedding song. But second of all, so my wife and I, our favorite, the first song that we kind of started like seeing each other to was like "You Found Me" by the Fray. So that was always going to be our wedding song, no matter what. We actually broke up for a period of like just about around a year. And then when I moved to Arkansas, and when I lived in Arkansas, I went to a Fray concert and I'd actually videotaped some Fray stuff for her. And she completely ignored me, but that's okay. I said she ghosted me. And but anyway, so when we were doing our song, my parents actually surprised us with an engagement gift that was to take dance lessons. And I'm not exactly like the best dancer. I'm not doing this, but my wife wanted to do it. And I told her, I was like, the only way we're doing it is if I hear on the speakers at some point during our song, "Cruising down the street in my 6'4". That was it. That was my only thing. And she's like, okay, well, I want AC/DC. And I'm like, okay, well, let's do all 3. Jeez. And that's kind of how it all came to be. Yeah, there's video. I'll send you it. There's a video somewhere, and it was lots of fun. I actually, we didn't tell anybody. and the MC, who was 7'6",
poor guy.
He was MCing, and I pretended like I hit Brianne in the face by accident. And I hit my wife in the face by accident. And 7'6" is just like, oh, Clint's been drinking too much already. I haven't had anything to drink yet. And then it was cruising down the street after that. So that's the whole story, man. It was lots of fun, and I'm a very eccentric person. I'm a very outgoing guy. So everyone kind of, I think, had a feeling we were going to do something goofy, but we gave her like a good 45 seconds of "You Found Me" before we cut into the other stuff. So it was kind of a surprise.
Now, it's funny that you talk about, being the eccentric guy, because in speaking with your wife, who is obviously the root of all of this information that I've been able to get from you, shout out Mrs. Chaps.
No.
The one thing that she did say was that, like, you're a great dad. She's not just saying that because she married you and she's sort of stuck with you for now. And she said, you do things to, make the kids laugh, including and not limited to jumping fully clothed into the bathtub just for like a good laugh, and then not realizing like the disaster of a mess that you then have to clean up from jumping fully clothed into a bathtub with the kids. And so outside of that story, what is like the defining story that you would share of like you in your ultimate, at your dad peak? Obviously, Chaps, this is a good example. You're just diving in there because you want to have a good time. You want your kids to have fun, and you don't give a shit about the repercussions of it. But what's like another story of like you just at your peak in full dad mode? So
when I lived in Kamloops, British Columbia, by the way, Mrs. Chaps, you're going to be in for a real conversation here in a couple minutes. So when I was living in Kamloops, British Columbia, there was a certain clothing store that just opened up in the mall. And my wife was checking it out, and we were all sitting there together, and we just had our first daughter, Luna. And I was just holding her, just, like goofing around with her, throwing her in the air, because I'm 6'4". So like I'm a pretty big guy. So like I throw them pretty high, and like I got no problem catching them or anything. Right. And all these people are giving me dirty looks. And this elderly woman comes up to me, or elderly man, sorry, comes up to me, and he's like, hey, you got to be careful with your kids. And I'm like, sir, how about you mind your own damn business? I'm here being a dad. I'm going to do whatever I want with my kid. And you know what? She's safe. She's okay. We're just goofing around. Like I'm spinning her, like holding both hands and spinning in circles and stuff like that, because I don't care what other people think. Right. I want to be the dad. I want to be who I am. And then this lady came up to me, an elderly lady, after like 10 minutes after, because we were goofing around in that store for like 20 minutes. And she was like kind of like not almost crying, but you could see like she's just like, you're being such a good dad. And I can't believe that you're willing to do all this stuff in public. And that sticks with me. I get a little emotional thinking about it, because it's just, I just quite honestly, I don't give a shit what people think. I really don't care. Like if I want to have fun with my kids in public, if I want to yell and scream, like I'll yell in the middle of a store, just like, just joking around, because I don't really care. I don't really care what people think. You get one life, you might as well live it. And so that's my ultimate dad story. If anyone ever asks me about dad, that's where I'd go. That's like the first 3 months of being a dad too. So there's lots more. I jump in the hot tub with all my clothes on when the kids are in there all the time too. So
let me tell you a quick story. This is not a sewer on Chaps either. It's actually one of the things I love about him, but in the moment you might hate about him. You got a midterm the next day. It's about 3:30 in the morning. You've been asleep since 10 o'clock, right? All of a sudden the doors open up and you just hear, woo! How's everybody doing? And I like open up the door. I'm like, Chaps, it's Thursday. And he's like, fucking damn right, it's Thursday. And from 3:30 until 7, you're sitting at a table in a dorm room with Chaps drinking coffee and eating garlic bread with him. And you're like, Chaps, don't you have a midterm tomorrow too? And he's like, yeah. Except the thing is, I can't function on less than 6 hours. I know for a fact Chaps can function on about an hour and a half of sleep and be the first guy up in the morning. It's absolutely psycho.
Wow. I mean, I get that. I'm the function on low amount of sleep, but eventually at like, week 3 of doing it, you need a single day to recharge. You get that one day of like 6 hours, and then you're good for the next, 3-4 weeks. Now, H, what about you? Like, what if you're going to tell someone a story about, you at your absolute peak of being a dad, what has happened so far that you would use?
That's a tough one. I think I need to really sit down and think about it. But because, it's tough to say the peak when my kids are so young.
Right.
But there are times where you go through some things where you see your kids in yourself. So times where, my son might have had a bad day at school, or we're trying to learn a skill in the backyard. I'm pretty tough on him when it comes to like sports. I'm not like a psycho dad, like run behind the truck and we're doing training.
Yeah.
But like when we're playing baseball in the backyard, we throw a hard ball. We're overhand, like at 6 years old, we're overhand throwing and things like that. So I would say for me, it was probably a little bit of a failure. It was being too hard on my son and seeing him kind of back away from me a little bit.
Right.
But then having the ability to give him that distance and go to him and say, you know what, Dad messed up. Like Dad said this and this to you, or I did this and I was totally wrong. And I never heard my dad say that. Not that my dad didn't apologize, but to actually get down on your knees, level of your kids and say, I made a mistake, and they recognize that you're saying, hey, Dad's messed up too. Now I know with my son that I can make those sort of mistakes and say that to him. And we have this open relationship where we're going to forgive each other in the moment. And there's none of this awkwardness where he runs to mom or runs away and doesn't want to be near you. And to me, that's like super important moving forward for trust.
Interesting. Now, I know you guys talked about this with Mr. Dan Murphy on episode 5 of the Dad Pops podcast, which I can obviously count. Chaps can't when he puts together his Instagram posts.
Yeah, probably not.
No, that was me.
Okay, there we go. Sorry. See, I tried to sewer
I'm
Chaps.
Happy that it got blamed on Chaps. So if you Chaps, let's roll with it.
Yeah, see, there we go. We'll have to erase that one back. But you guys brought up a topic that obviously I've been super fired up about on many different levels, and this is Mitch Miller. The Mitch Miller situation in Arizona, which again, I believe it was UH who said Phoenix Coyotes as opposed to the Arizona Coyotes.
How many mistakes did we make in this episode, H? Like, come on, man, get on your game.
I try not to be like, all right, guys, what are we doing here anymore at the end of the episodes? I enjoy them so much. I listen to them like twice or sometimes even 3 times because I think they're great. But I mean, I've heard a little bit of Dan's opinion, and I really want to dive into it with you guys from the lens of a parent, because I think there is blame to go around for absolutely everybody in this situation. I think parents are to blame because they've allowed Mitch to sort of foster these feelings. I believe the Arizona Coyotes, I almost said Phoenix now, Arizona Coyotes screwed up because they just got caught with their pants down. They tried to take advantage of the situation where 30 other teams decided that they didn't want to draft him. He was undraftable, and they tried to get a second round talent in the 4th round. I think Mitch he screwed up, and he, as a human being, is failing society and himself because, and I've told Chaps this, he's seen me. I've stayed off Twitter for like a very long amount of time from when it first came out to like maybe 3 months ago, just because of the podcast, just to get information and some interaction out. And I have been hammering people on this topic because a lot of people come out and they say, well, this kid's life is ruined. How are you going to take away the one thing that he had? And I spoke to a very prominent hockey mom whose son is probably going to be drafted within the top 3 or 4 of next year's NHL draft. And I asked her just, flat out, as a parent, what do you sort of think? And she sort of had that same vibe, and she's someone who I can't really argue with because there's a work connection with, but I was kind of surprised to hear that, even then, some parents think that this kid deserved a second opportunity to play professional hockey. And I'm just curious, without getting too much into it, which I'm sure maybe we might, sort of get into after, what are your initial thoughts on the situation when it comes to, Mitch Miller's, losing everything that he sort of had within a very short amount of time?
If he was the first overall pick, we wouldn't even be talking about this because the Coyotes would have kept him. The Glendale Coyotes would have kept him there. I think that's, listen, as a parent, you have to do a better job of realizing when your kid's a bully, because I actually got bullied when I was growing up. I did 100%. And my parents recognized that as being like a bullied kid type idea. But the other parents of the other kids recognized too that their kid, is being a bully. Now then I grew to 6'4", so it didn't really matter in the end.
Right.
But I think you, as a parent, you have to do a better job of recognizing that your kid's a bully. Now, in saying all of that, like at the same time, he did this when he was 16. When you're 16, you still have that, like, I know what's right and I know what's wrong. And you still have the, or maybe it was whatever he was, 14 or 16. I think it was 16. You still have all that in your head. You know what you're doing is right and you know what you're doing is wrong. And he, I'm sorry, eventually you got to pay the piper. And if you want to sit there when you're 16 and do stuff like that, listen, I have my stuff in the closet too. There's no doubt. I've done some stuff that I'm not proud of, but you can't trace anything like that back to me. And I think that eventually you have to be careful, and you have to realize that, listen, you can't just go out there and start making fun of people and bullying people and racism on minorities. Like, what type of household did this kid grow up in? That's the other thing.
So I can kind of speak to that point just from talking to the mom. Dad apparently is like a very high level lawyer in the United States. And so the thought process is he's been like this. He's been a very highly skilled hockey player at the highest levels of junior hockey. And the thought that it was just going to be swept under the rug because that's what you did in previous years. There was no accountability held by his parents to him or for him after the judge sort of sentenced him. He started doing this at 14. He got caught, got sentenced. It continued on for another 2 to 4 years after that. And the one excuse that people had sort of come up with is that, oh, he's just a kid. Well, he's 18 years old now. And if he doesn't understand at 14 that urinating on a lollipop and forcing a child who has a disability, a cognitive disability, to lick it and then beat on him and call him racist names and get him to call himself racist names only because that child or that other student just wanted to be liked by those two goons, it's just beyond me. Like, how do you not hold your child accountable? I think about, my kids. If my kids were either the bully or being bullied, it's my responsibility to teach them values. And so while I don't put the complete onus on him, I think that he started off at a disadvantage because he had parents who just didn't give a shit enough to teach him right from wrong and thought that his skill level was just going to take him to the next level. He'll have a career. Like most people in the United States, they think that, skills or money is just going to solve every problem and everything else gets, wiped under the rug.
Like a president?
Maybe,
I mean, I don't know. What am I talking about?
It was like literally like the best story that could have come out of the United States because it like epitomized everything that the president sort of represented. H, how do you feel about it?
So I feel a lot of things about it. And to be honest, I'm going to play a little bit of a devil's advocate here just because I can see both sides. On the one side, there's never an excuse to treat anybody disrespectfully like that. And basically what this individual did is abuse, whether and the fact that he abused someone who is mentally challenged makes it all the worse because you're taking advantage of someone at that level, and it's just so absolutely horrific to think of it. Then the other piece I think of is the parents too. What happened during this time where this is happening at the school? What is the school system like that there was no way to rectify this and to make sure that this stopped immediately or that there were repercussions to this individual? So what I also see is a lot of privilege. This individual played for USHL. He played for his nation.
Yep.
And it was not bit in the butt there. So on the one side, they're sending messages to Mitch Miller that say your personal life and how you treat people and how you act doesn't matter. You can do this separate from your hockey and from your school, and you can be two different people. Well, guess what? In the day of social media and things catching up to you, you can't live two separate lives anymore. With that said, what are you being shown in your culture? We live in a culture where pro athletes and actors and popular people do live by two separate standards. You guys just pointed out the president of the United States, our prime minister in some respects, although I don't think it's the same level as Trump, live in a world of two different standards. With that said, you have to be held accountable for your actions. And if that means that you get drafted to the NHL and you're living out your life's dream all your hard work in that area and that gets ripped because of the climate and the place that we're in this world, then you have to live with those consequences as well. What I do hope for the individual is that he gets a chance. We had that scholarship with North Dakota, I believe. Is that who it was? North Dakota?
Yeah. North Dakota University.
Yeah. So again, that's a big privilege, but it would have been really interesting to see because that student athlete combination, I think, can show a lot of character. So it would have been nice to see if they might have left that. I can see why they didn't, but to see what this person's going to be like for the next 2 years. Is this the cocky, arrogant individual who's still kind of that same person he was 4 years ago that doesn't have respect, or has this person changed? Because I do think there's room for personal transformation in someone young, but that scholarship and that opportunity is so important. Did you already do things that disqualify you from being able to have that? That's the other question. I don't know the answer to that. Because you know what? At the end of the day, he's going to go to Russia. And guess what? I hate to say this. This is going to be a very, rude thing to say. In Russia, LGBTQ, people with mental disability, they are treated as though they are people who do not exist.
Yeah.
To them, they don't even see anything wrong with that. Big freaking deal. So what's the message going to be sent when he goes to Russia? You can still make 200, 300,000 US. Come play here. Not a bad life. Enjoy your summers in Connecticut or wherever you summer. And
Connecticut's beautiful.
Man. A lot to unpack. I mean, I understand the devil advocacy that you're playing here, H, but to me, this goes on. He gets sentenced by a judge, and at his sentencing, the judge tells him that he doesn't believe that he is remorseful. And so I understand an institution like the University of North Dakota, who actually came out and said that they're going to try to help him initially when this sort of all happened, because they knew about it. This is not like a hidden story. And the U.S. is very different because in Canada, our juvenile records are sealed. In the United States, they are not, right? And so it's a little bit different. If this happened in Canada, would this have been as big of a deal? Probably not.
No.
Depending on the severity of it, because we probably didn't hear about all of these things. That being said, you're talking about redemption. And we're talking about someone who still to this day has not apologized for his actions. And so while I do believe that all people deserve second chances, I believe people deserve second chances when they show the willingness to change and to learn. And to this point, he has not done so. And so the thing that really bothered me about what a lot of people were saying was that he had this entitlement that it was their responsibility to fix something that the person was not willing to fix themselves. Now, the University of North Dakota took away the hockey part of his scholarship. He will not play on their team, but he is still able to attend school for that next, either the first year or the first 2 years. They honor that scholarship. So he can still go to school. Now, that plays another big part. If he decides to go to school and decides to become a better human being, way different, because those things are still in place for him to do. Whether he chooses to or not is going to be very different. But he, in the course of 72 hours, gets denounced by USA Hockey, University of North Dakota, and the Arizona Coyotes. And I do believe that just because you are skilled, it does not mean you are entitled to take the next step to becoming a professional. That is a special honor and not a privilege. There are far more talented people through other circumstances who just don't get a shot for whatever reason.
Sure.
The wrong scout saw them. It could be the color of their skin. It could be where they were born. It could be who their parents are, a whole other thing. Exactly, an off day. But when you lose your opportunity because of stupidity of your own doing, I have very little sympathy. I hope he doesn't do anything rash and hurt himself or anything like that. But will I lose a wink of sleep because he never plays professional hockey again, or at least not in North America? It goes to Russia. By all means, go live in that archaic and barbaric country over there when you have such small-minded thoughts. It doesn't belong here. What do you think?
Let's not kid ourselves though. Like if this kid, listen, I agree with everything you're saying, Julian. Everything. I think that I don't care that the kid was 14. I don't care that he was 16. Like, you know what? You have to be held accountable for your actions, and it sucks. It does at a point. It does suck for him, but I grew up on a farm, so I was, I was taught at a very, very young age, like your actions have consequences. If you don't feed the chickens, this chicken dies, type idea.
Yeah.
If this calf over here is born with a limp or something like that, we got to kill it. Like that, like you live with the consequences, right? So, but at the same time, let's not kid ourselves. If this kid goes out and does his recoup and does his media tour and everything, and the guys end up saying, he's remorseful, he's all this. If he's that talented of a player, he'll make his way to the NHL. He will. There's no doubt that it will happen.
You're wrong.
I know. I really hope I'm wrong too. But let's be honest. For sure. Think about some of the criminals that are playing right now.
Well,
hold on. Just wait. Who just got signed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? What did that guy do? Look at Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill broke his 3-year-old's arm.
Yeah.
There are worse people right now doing crazy stuff that are still playing professional football, that are still playing hockey. What was Danny Heatley killed somebody?
There you go.
He killed somebody. What was Morsley, the old the Edmonton head coach? I can't remember his name. Another drunk driver. He killed somebody too.
Craig McTavish.
Did
a year and 2 months in jail. So you're right. That's what I'm agreeing with you with, is the fact that what I don't like about the Mitch Miller thing has nothing to do. Well, sorry, it does have to do with Mitch Miller, but it has to do with the reactive nature of it. And it's like, you know what, we're going to make an example out of Mitch Miller, but don't pay attention to all this other stuff where we have people abusing their spouse in domestic cases, committing other, felons and things like that. I just think it's this double standard. So I have to weigh that. If I look at it in isolation, I say, I don't like the guy Mitch Miller is. I don't like the value system. I don't think that's something that should be rewarded. But if you actually look at what we're rewarding, it's been dismissed for so long.
Yeah, no. I agree. It's tough. It's a hard situation. None of what you guys are saying is incorrect. For those who are just listening, Chaps has now finished his entire bottle of wine. Had to take a big gulp after that conversation. I mean, it's unfortunate. I think that it really just struck a chord with me being a parent and hearing other parents or other adults just come to the defense so very easily and not truly understand the major psychological and physical ramifications that his actions had on another child, especially that of someone who does have a disability. It's just terribly unfortunate. And do I want the kid to get better? 100%. I want him to realize what he did was wrong. I want him to do it for the right reasons, though. I don't want him to do it because he wants to get everything that he lost back. I want him to be able to think, maybe one day I want to be a dad and I want to start a family. And I need to grow as a person in order to do that, or I'm going to fuck another person's life up and continue this vicious cycle.
He's 18, right? So he just voted, right? Yeah. Guaranteed he voted Trump. I mean, guaranteed. His parents
love to see that
voted
ballot.
Trump too. Guaranteed, 100%. He didn't learn nothing from this. He needs to go away.
Yeah, no. All right, so I do want to get to another question because I know Chaps and I have been sort of going back and forth about this, and this is not really meant for like a debate of who the greatest is, but more of I did a poll on Instagram a few weeks ago.
I knew this was going to come up. I knew it.
Where I asked, give me the greatest of all time when it comes to, these sports. And I want to read you some of the numbers because I'm very interested because it doesn't seem like the same criteria is being held over from sport to sport or even from person to person when people answered it. So 80% of the NHL responses were Wayne Gretzky, which easy. Not hard to argue. It's pretty easy. And we can sort of go over after why, people think he's the greatest. He's obviously nicknamed the Great One. So, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory.
It's not debatable. That one's not debatable. He is the greatest.
Michael Jordan came in at 75%. A little bit lower than I anticipated, but obviously some of the names fall within the realm of understandment when having the conversation and comparing to MJ. Kobe, Wilt, LeBron James, just to name a few. For Major League Baseball, this is probably the one that was staggered the most. And so the person who came in with the most votes was Babe Ruth. And the person who was number 2 was Barry Bonds. And judging by the facial reactions of both Chaps and H, it's not a popular opinion, but I think that baseball is the single hardest sport to talk about when it comes to greatness because you have to compare eras unlike any other sport. And we'll get into hockey and the protection of Gretzky, which allowed him to be great. We'll get into, basketball and the hand check and the physicality of it. But baseball I thought was very interesting. Now, NFL, as much as, Chaps wanted to say Peyton was the guy.
He is the guy. He is the guy. He is the guy. Brady
comes in at an overwhelming amount of votes as being the greatest of all time. Manning actually got less votes than Randy Moss, Joe Montana, and Jerry Rice.
You're the one that told me that Randy Moss wasn't even the top 5 guy. Now your poll's coming back as he's the second. He could be the second.
I did not select Randy Moss. I am just telling you what other people said to me.
He was good. He was damn good.
Listen, I get it. I am not arguing. I'm just telling you the facts. Tennis, very interesting one. One I'm a little bit more upset about. A large number of people said Roger Federer. I would have understood if they came back and even said Serena Williams, because I didn't specify gender or anything. I left it open. You tell me who the greatest is. I argued I don't think Federer is the greatest of all time. He got to the number of titles first, but I don't think that he is the greatest tennis player of all time. That's just mine. F1. Now this changed. A lot of people came in early Schumacher. And then a lot of, you could tell, younger people came with Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
We'll get into that. Golf, Woods overwhelmingly over Jack Nicklaus, but those are the only 2 people that people named. And then boxing. Now, boxing is probably the most fascinating one because on most scales, we compare greatness by titles.
Yeah.
The amount of wins versus the amount of losses. Boxing is the difference. Yeah. And so over 60% of people said Muhammad Ali, 30% of people said Mike Tyson, and then we have Sugar Ray. No one said Floyd Mayweather. And so like my gripe with this, and I guess the conversation that we're going to have, dads with other dads, the greatest dad conversation is the greatest of all time in any sport.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm like freaking out right now.
It's easy to see that we don't compare. We don't have the same criteria sport to sport, right? Muhammad Ali, because of what he did when he was winning, he was untouched. But the fact is he lost a lot of fights. He lost some fights to greater fighters at the time, yet some people still say that he's the greatest. Same thing with Mike Tyson. And then we have the Michael Jordan argument. He's 6-0 in the NBA Finals. He's got 6 MVPs. What is the standard that we are talking about when we compare greatness? It's hard because if you don't have the same criteria, it's hard to determine the greatest of all time. Now, I want to start with, who is your GOAT of GOATs? Cool. Single person of all of the GOATs in your mind, who is the GOAT? And then make your argument as to why they should be on that Mount Rushmore of GOATs. It's hard.
I think it's got to be, if I'm being honest about it, I think LeBron James is the best basketball player of all time. So I really honestly think if you're talking the greatest of all time and records that will never be broken, I know he didn't win the most championships in that sport, but it still has to be Gretzky. It has to be. No one's ever going to break any of those records. It won't happen. And you could say, yeah, different era. Listen, Sidney Crosby is a better hockey player than Wayne Gretzky is. That doesn't matter. The fact is, you have to do, in your era, you have to do what is necessary to put yourself above everybody. And Gretzky just, what's his points record? 215 in one season. Yep. It's insane. Those records will never be broken. He has more assists than anyone has points.
Yeah,
think about that. That's never going to happen. So I contradicted myself with saying Crosby's a better hockey player, but he's it's confusing. But to me, if you have the Abe Lincoln on your Mount Rushmore or whoever's first, I don't know if it's Roosevelt. I have no idea. Whoever is that mainstay on Mount Rushmore, for me, it's Gretzky. It just is.
Now, before I get to you, H, I want to go to a point because I don't want this to get lost. Chaps, I agree with you that you can have a better athlete not be the GOAT.
Yeah.
And so this is the argument that I make. I make Peyton Manning was a better quarterback than Tom Brady. But Tom Brady is greater than Peyton Manning.
He's not though, man. Like, look at the seasons. Look at the in-season stats. They're not even close. You got it. Take from the time because I'll give you. Obviously, Tom Brady's played till he's 45 or whatever it is. It's insane. What he's doing right now is it's nuts. But let's just take it from the time Peyton Manning when he retired at 38, 39. I honestly don't know how old he was when he retired. From the time he was 23 when he came into the league, there was not one player that dominated like Peyton Manning did in the NFL in NFL history. Everyone always says, "Oh, Dan Marino." Okay, why is Dan Marino a better quarterback than Peyton Manning? That argument makes no sense. Anyone that says that is a complete idiot. Chris Russo of Mad Dog Sports Radio, you're a complete idiot. You're saying Dan Marino and Brett Favre are better than Peyton Manning? Like, eat a cupcake and go away. You're fucking 50 years old or 80 years old. Like, grow up. No, I honestly think, and I get it. You say Tom Brady, I have no way to come back that because of the 6 Super Bowls. I get it. But the fact is, all the records that could have been set were set by Peyton Manning before he left. He lost 2 years to injury, and he went to 4 Super Bowls with 4 different head coaches, 4 different offensive coordinators. Won 2 of them, got carried to 1. I'll completely admit it. And he gets shit on because he lost to arguably the greatest defense of all time in the Super Bowl. That's the truth.
I don't know if he gets shit on. I just think that when it came to the big game, Peyton just didn't have it. Even if you don't look at Super Bowl wins, you look at the amount of times he made it to the Super Bowl, it's way different, right? If you look at the times, sure, he has a better record against Tom Brady in the AFC Championship. You're not playing against Brady. You're playing against the defense, right? And so you can play against who you're playing against. But at the end of the day, Tom Brady ends up in more AFC Championship games.
Okay, but what you just said is easy to pick apart. You play against whatever, right? You're not playing against Tom Brady. You're playing against the defense.
Sure.
Okay, let's look at the defenses that Tom Brady has to play against in his career. Like, they're not good. He played the AFC East, who is the dog shit of the NFL for like 20 years. I'll give you the Jets for a couple years, but that's it.
But hold on. So if you're going to talk about divisions, please tell me in Tennessee, Houston Texans, Matt Schaub is the quarterback of the Houston Texans, and you're going to tell me
I guarantee
prior to JJ Watt that that was a better defense?
If you put the records together, and I'm talking like career when they were in the same time era, if you put the record of the AFC East versus the AFC South or AFC South, that's what they're in, right? Yeah, AFC South. In the AFC South, if you put those 2 records of each division together, I guarantee you the AFC South is better during that 10, 15-year period, whatever it was. I guarantee it. The Jets have been god off. They had 2 good years, the Jets. I'll give you that. They did have 2 good years. Other than that, the Dolphins are terrible. They've been terrible. They've been absolutely terrible. You can't argue that, man. Come on. You're better than that.
Like I said, I agree that Peyton Manning was a better quarterback because you look at the statistics that are now starting to fall. Obviously, I feel like longevity does have to play a part in it.
I'll agree with that.
Because sure, Peyton lost 2 years, Brady lost 1 after he had that ACL injury, but being able to maintain your level of health and extend your career like what LeBron James is doing and will continue to do, I think that plays a part in it. It's unfortunate Peyton had like a degenerative neck issue. It's not his fault. But other players are starting to, have that longevity in their sports because of the things that they are doing. And I think
they're all doing steroids.
Well,
I mean,
shout out Alex Guerrero over at TB12 Sports.
I guarantee Peyton Manning did steroids too. Like, there's no doubt. I'm not like, listen, he did. But I don't know. I mean, I think if you put 1 Peyton, 2 Tom, or 1 Tom, 2 Peyton, I don't think you're wrong.
I mean, I have to say Peyton does steroids because there's no way that big ass head is natural.
His forehead got so much bigger.
That's huge. Now, sorry, H, I totally hijacked, but I want to know your GOAT of GOATs when it comes to that Mount Rushmore.
Yeah. So just to clarify, because you guys have been pretty like major sports, like all sports. Can we go all sports on this?
All sports.
Okay.
Oh wait, hold on. All major sports. Like, I don't want your badminton or your lacrosse go.
Oh man, Zing Wang? Okay. Come on, no.
So let me give you 2 then, just because I think this individual, as much as sometimes I think he is kind of a boring person, he doesn't get enough credit. Mr. Michael Phelps, I think, is one of the all-time freak athletes. Just I'm not gonna, like, I don't care about, honestly, I don't give a fuck about swimming. I hate to say this, but Like even in the Olympics, I think it's so fucking boring. But I try and swim 5 laps in the fucking pool, and I'm like, how does this guy do this? So I think in terms of his VO2 max, like the fitness testing they do on this guy is crazy. He's a superhuman. Chap said this before. There's a few guys that he thinks could go pro in like any sport. I think that's Phelps. If you could re-engineer this guy to be anything, but major sport, I'm going to go with Lionel Messi is my greatest of all time at the sport that he.
He's not even the greatest in his own sport. Come on.
I think he is, to be honest. In terms of game changer, here's my reasoning. It's how he changes the game. And the guy for me who I'll compare to a major sport, if people don't watch a lot of soccer, which I must admit I don't, is Mario Lemieux. For me, he's the best NHLer of all time because the impact he has on the game. He draws people to him. He opens players. Mario, and if he wasn't sick, he went through a lot of injuries, and he went through cancer as well. God knows where he would have ended in points.
You see what I put up with here? Do you see what I have to put up with?
I think Mario. I will say I think Mario Lemieux is the best natural talent in the NHL of all time. I've heard from people that Mario used to smoke over a pack a day of cigarettes and still beat everyone in fitness testing. He's just that big of a freak.
We got through 24 episodes before I officially think the Big O podcast might be over. I think, guys, I might sign off and never sign back on again.
Is that controversial? Is Lemieux that controversial? Really?
See, he's not even top 5. Well, he's maybe top 5 in his own sport. I don't even know.
Yeah, I wouldn't put him in the top 5. I mean, I could understand the argument someone could make of putting him in the top 5. I'm not being he's not in top 5 ever. I mean, sure, you can be convinced. When you get to that 4-5 stage, they're all sort of interchangeable depending on the argument on any given day.
Yeah.
But Lionel Messi,
he's not.
He's not even. Okay. So when you want to talk about like impact, when you want to talk about skill level, when you want to talk about what guys did during their careers, he's outside of my top 3 because in his current era, he's number 2 easily.
Yeah.
Right, Cristiano Ronaldo, and if you look at the success that Messi has had, it really came in the latter years when it comes to club success of Barcelona being dominated. He's one of those super clubs, right? It's like a Real Madrid. It's hard to talk about individual talent where Cristiano gets that edge is sort of what he's been able to start to do on the international level. But I mean, Neymar played a huge contributor into Lionel Messi's numbers, especially over the last 5 seasons. Luis Suarez was another guy. But Pele, I easily put ahead of him. Diego Maradona, who hopefully is recovering.
Cowboy.
Listen, if you talk about impact, what he's had both club and international level, and the success that he has had, Diego Maradona is the guy. So I mean, not even in that same era. And then, sure, you could put Messi's top 5 of all time. 100%.
Oh, for sure, absolutely, he's top 5.
But he's probably no higher than 4. So he's in the 4-5 range. I still think Cristiano Ronaldo's in there. But it's interesting, your point about Michael Phelps. Someone did reach out and say, well, why don't we put Olympic athletes in there? I wanted to do major sports because when you come to the Olympics, you only have these stars who have done it on more than one occasion. So Michael Phelps is going to be the guy. But if no one's going to talk about the, triathlete, the triathlon who's won it 10 years in a row, because it's just not up there, right? I mean, you could look at, a Lance before, obviously, we figured everything out. He would have arguably been the greatest cyclist of all time.
But that's different. We all know what happened there. And there was less than cheating. Or more than cheating is this guy was conspiring to make other people cheat and to put other people down. So that's different.
They were all cheating,
but they were all cheating. Everyone was
cheating.
But if we're going to go there and we're going to talk Phelps, I'm going to bring him into the mix and throw you off like that, then someone's going to say, well, what about Usain Bolt? Because really, he's really probably the GOAT.
He's not even on the same level as Michael Phelps, man. He's just not. Michael Phelps dominated the Olympics for so many years.
But
like I don't like Michael Phelps. I think he's an idiot. But he's the best. He's probably the best athlete, the best Olympic athlete of all time. He probably is. Him and Usain Bolt, those two are pretty good.
So here's my argument to you. Like I was saying about Michael Phelps
Biles, she's pretty good.
And Julian, I don't mean to take this into a different direction, but like Michael Phelps being a freak athlete, and who knows if he would have put, a hockey stick in his hand or a soccer ball in his feet, where he would have gone. Usain Bolt could have probably been a pro athlete in rugby, soccer, football, like that guy, just based on his composition. So I'm not trying to argue he's like the best of all time, but he's a guy who grew up in a different kind of world where, running those sorts of sports were what was available.
Sure.
But if you look at this guy's composition, he could easily be a wide receiver in the NFL and probably kill everybody.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, it's hard to make those arguments because, how does it really translate? Yes, speed translate, but it's very different when you have a Ray Lewis who knocks the shit out of you one time coming over the middle. And, so you give credit to guys like Deion Sanders, Herschel Walker, the monster of a guy being an NFL player and then going and trying to get on the Olympic bobsled team, the U.S. Olympic bobsled team, and then beating the shit out of people in MMA. Then you have Bo Jackson.
Jesse Lumsden.
Jesse Lumsden, sure, Canadian content. Not in that same caliber, but I mean, you have Bo Jackson who, again, his career gets shortened due to injury. What impact could he have really had? But you see the build of those type of players and their ability to go over multiple sports. LeBron James, I think, because he also played college, high school football, could have probably translated. But I think when you go with a Michael Phelps and you go with a Usain Bolt, the problem is it's all fun and games. And I think Mike Tyson said it. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. And being able to sprint in a straight line with no physical contact is going to be very different than lining up with someone who gets to put their hands on you within 5 yards, who's going to jam you and take you completely off your just vertical route. Now, if he plays in the CFL, maybe it translates because no, but you look at the rules. The CFL receivers can have a running start. So when you can generate that speed and it's a little bit harder to be able to get their hands on you, maybe translate to have more success, but it's hard. I mean, he tried soccer, didn't work out.
Yeah, but here's my thing. I'm saying if you take these individuals when they're young, right? We know something like what I really like, and this is getting a little bit weird because some of the genetic.
Oh, we're gonna get weird here on the Saturday night. Let's go.
What else is new, right? Some of the things they're doing now is they're really breaking things down biochemically and looking at physiology. And they're basically saying, what's the common denominator between some of the best athletes? And what they're saying is it's less about necessarily what am I getting here? It's
use your words. Let's use your words. Yeah, use your words. It's good.
I'm trying
not
to contradict myself. So they're saying that there's a variable, which I love, which is that hard work variable and your environment. And then there's your genetic makeup. But they're saying one of the biggest common denominators between some of the best athletes is they just have some freak genetics. What I like and the kind of player I was, in terms of my sports, was I was the guy who's like, hey, I don't necessarily have it all genetically, although I had some things going for me, but you got to make it up in the hard work and in the mental toughness. That's the stuff that you can't necessarily package or see ahead of time. So my argument is basically, if you take some of these freak athletes who are freak at these they're not minor, but they're just very specific things, and say, if this person was taken at 5 years old and put into like a soccer academy or a football academy, would they have taken off and been successful? That's where I'm kind of coming at from that. Not saying necessarily now.
It's so hard because if Usain Bolt like breaks an ankle because he's been tackled the wrong way, he has zero career, right? It's so hard. It's a great argument because the hypotheticals you could go on with tons of athletes. Mike Trout being one of them in baseball. Mookie Betts has been talked about recently when it comes to other sports that he could have played. The fact that he's like a professional bowler. I mean,
that's nuts. Oh, he's crazy good at bowling.
He's stupid good. Like he's stupid good. Easily could retire from baseball and then decide to fill out a professional bowling career and be the top of the game. So I think it's interesting. I know I'm confused. Did you say that Mario is the goat of goats? I mean, I'm trying to figure out what the answer
is. He said
Messi. Oh my God, even worse. That was a messier answer than anything.
Who are I actually said Phelps. I said Phelps is the goat.
So you went off the board. You went off the board. That's right.
The board.
Yeah.
Okay. For me, I guess I love Tiger Woods. But
so did a lot of women.
Lots of women. Lots.
He's not even the best golfer in the world. Don't even go there.
Okay, no, I might. Okay, hold on, chaps. I agree he may not be the best current golfer of all time, or current golfer right now.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
So I think that's what H was trying to get to, because if he tries to tell me he's not the greatest of all time, then again,
he's about. Hold on, you can see him in the camera here. He's about to say that Tiger Woods is not the greatest golfer of all time.
Let me give you this, because I think this might be something actually valuable, and you won't just be like, "Wow, this guy is nuts." Okay, in every other sport, we'll use hockey for example. It was easier to score goals 30 years ago than it is now. True or false?
True.
Easier in the
true.
game.
Yeah,
Right? More goals
true.
scored.
Yep.
More right. It's tighter now, even though the technology's
No,
there.
yeah, you're right. You're 100% right.
In golf, in my opinion, when Jack Nicklaus is hitting clubs with a persimmon driver, I believe it's harder to score lower back in the old days than it is now. And it was more of a tactical game. Not that there's not tactics in it now, but I think he was handicapped. So I actually put Jack Nicklaus one ahead of Tiger. That's
But
my only.
I think the courses are developed harder now, though, based on those things, right?
Not to some degree, absolutely.
But you have
par 5 was 400 yards back when Jack Nicholson was playing.
True, but look at what you're hitting for technology. So what your argument there would have to be that technology hasn't come up as the same level as the course has gotten harder. And I would disagree with you, because even a guy like me who's god awful, if I hit my driver on the sweet spot, I'm putting that thing 325 easily. Although I do put it in the woods, but
you're talking about one time. We're talking about consistently being able to do that over the course of, X amount of holes, year after year, tournament after tournament. I think it's Tiger. I mean, for me, he's if I'm asked to induct or put that first head up there, it's going to be, Santa Tiger, if you remember that photo.
Dude, that is one of the best. Actually, I said Gretzky, but I mean, I was going back and forth in my head. Serena Williams would be up there too, because her and Tiger are a lot alike. Like, Tiger to me dominated more in like that 5-year span, probably greater than any athlete of all time.
Yeah.
I think Gretzky did it longer, but Serena dominated for 12 years. Yeah. And the problem with Serena, other than in the media, because she's black, so everyone doesn't like talking about her. But the other problem with Serena is she legitimately didn't have the good competitions. But you have to play who you play, right? And like I said, like the black thing, it sucks for her, because if she was white, she'd be the greatest athlete of all time. We wouldn't even be talking about it. So she has a couple things going against her, but she would be up there too.
Yeah, I think it's always hard, and I know it's hard to sort of pose this question, but it's always hard until careers are over to see where they end up. Because like right now, Serena's trailing in titles won and major championships.
Yeah.
And so do I think she gets there? Yes, I think she gets there. It's easy. If she falls a little bit short, it depends on how short it is, because we still, depending on some, when competition isn't there, then we revert to titles. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's the argument of, I think Rafael Nadal, based on how late he sort of got started after only being a clay guy, needs to be mentioned in the conversation.
Okay.
Because sure, Federer got there. He is not going to end up with the most major titles won. And again, when we talk about longevity, what Rafa's been able to do, not much better than Federer, but I think he may end up playing more tournaments down the line and have a chance at the title. I don't even think it's Djokovic. I think
you're wrong about that. It's Djokovic.
Yeah. Well, again, we're going to have to see, because Djokovic has struggled early in his career.
Yeah.
When it came to like fitness, and that really sort of hampered him. And so what he will end up doing once Federer and Nadal sort of leave or start to play in less tournaments will really sort of be, I think if you end it now, Djokovic is not arguably the greatest tennis player of all time.
I think he is. I mean, I really think he is. I mean, I'll go back to Chris Russo. I don't know why I'm picking on him tonight, but Chris Russo, who is arguably the biggest tennis fan I've ever heard in my life. I listen to his radio show every time I'm driving. It goes Dan Le Batard and then Chris Russo. I know you can't get much different between the two, but that's what it is. Chris Russo, a huge tennis fan. His favorite tennis player of all time, Roger Federer. That's his favorite.
Sure.
His best player his best tennis player of all time, Novak Djokovic.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're going to have to wait and see what everybody ends up with, because when we look at competition, I think tennis is probably in the greatest prime of guys playing against each other. And this is probably one where when you look at titles, then you'll have the comparables of who played against who and what those records were, and the I guess the times of who played who in the finals and how it ended up as a tiebreaker. But it'll be interesting. But
it's insane when you think about it. Like, think about all the great players, like tennis specifically. I mean, listen, we're spending way too much time on tennis, but tennis specifically, you had the top 3 players of all time playing at the same time.
Yep.
The football, probably not really. I mean, but like hockey, not really. Every other sport, it's never happened before. And they're all, and it's a single sport too, because now they're all playing against each other all the time. We're so lucky. Tennis is a crazy boring sport sometimes, most of the time, every time. But you know, it's just, when it goes away, we're gonna be like, oh man, we kind of missed the golden age of tennis.
Yeah, 100. It's sort of like when Phil and Tiger fell out of being the two top dogs, and then you had one person just winning a tournament, like a new person winning a major every single year. It was kind of like, oh, well, who's going to be the plug and play guy in there now, and not look at the greatness that we're going to see. Because guys pull out of tournaments, you know, Ricky Fowler or Rory was supposed to be the guy, and then he doesn't play in some of the tournaments, doesn't do so well. I mean, again, I think we'll appreciate, like you said, tennis when it's all said and done, and we'll look back and just see how good Tiger and Phil was back in their heyday, because that's probably the closest thing we'll ever get again when it comes to just two guys competing against each other in golf. Gentlemen, listen, hour and a half. This was fun. This literally could have gone on. I had to like sort of curtail like the GOAT segment and put parameters on it, because I know we'd literally do an entire episode just on that. But before we go, I want to, you know, tell the guys, anyone who wants to listen to the podcast, new episodes every Wednesday at midnight. We got to change that time. It's not helping me waiting up for this at 3 a.m. my time. But who do you guys have coming up as guests on the show? And again, just give us the time we can download it.
So right now we just recorded last night. We have the Master Chef winner of whatever season it was. I have no idea.
I hope that was your intro.
It should be. Trevor Connie, he's coming on. He's actually my brother-in-law. So he came on. Yeah, it's kind of neat. So he talks about, you know, some of the behind the scenes of the Master Chef, and he cooked in the bubble for the NHL too. So it's a really neat episode. Download them Wednesdays at midnight if you're in BC. Wednesdays at 3 a.m. If you're in the East Coast. We're working on another big name guest. Yeah, you know, he's ghosting us right now, so I hope he listens to this. David Sampson has agreed to, the former president of the Miami Marlins, has agreed to actually come on the Dad Pops podcast with us. So we're trying to nail down that here in the future. It was actually supposed to be next week. So, but he's kind of ghosting us, kind of like he ghosted Montreal. Well, come on. And then we got other cool things planned. We got maybe some chef stuff we're going to do. We also have, we're going to go back in time a little bit here in the future. We're going to bring on some older dads and do like an episode of like 1980 or raising kids in the 90s dads. They're two awesome guys. They're going to be drinking heavily. So that's going to be lots of fun in the future. But right now, we're just kind of using Twitter to reach out to people. You know, follow us on Twitter at Dad Pops Podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Dad Pops Podcast, and let us know what you guys don't like. But we won't give a fuck, because we'll keep doing whatever we want. And so just give us a follow, give us a download, and I think you'll enjoy it. If you're a dad, I quite honestly think we're the one group where we just want to make sure that you have that feeling like you want to yell at us all the time, or you agree with us, that you're in the room with us. So follow us and, share, subscribe, and unsubscribe and resubscribe. Let's get those numbers up.
Awesome. Listen, for my guests, H, Chaps, and Snaps, will pour one out for you, homie, wherever the hell you are right now. I am your host of the Big O Podcast, Julian Ortiz. Thank you for watching and listening. Have a great night, everybody.